T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Power clear.
Hey y'all, I'm James Roy, and with me is Garret Williams. This is the Bullpen. We are live from the Bullpen. Now, you may have noticed that Tom is not here. Garrett's filling in, aka Texans commenter, aka Houston Stressins, and we're here to have a discussion about if we're blessing or stressing the new Texans schedule. And so, Garret, how are you doing today?
I'm big blessing. I think today was an awesome day. You know, you kind of get the leaks filtering out all day, and then it seemed like every leak you saw was confirmed later in the day. But 4 primetime games, 6 nationally televised, as opposed to last year, basically none. Big blessing, man.
100%. I mean, I think that there wasn't really much more the league could have done to answer Texans fans' cries than that. And it's also fun to note, I have a friend who's a Panthers fan, and he sent me a message that said the Panthers don't have any primetime games. And it's interesting to see because I believe they did last season. And that was a thing where I don't like rehashing this. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to lie. I really do love rehashing how the national media thought the Texans were the absolute worst destination with D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud, and all they did that offseason, and the NFL showed it with the way they scheduled the Texans. And so I think it means a lot the way the Texans were scheduled this season in terms of how not only the national media but the league views the team this season. But before we get into that, the day after we went live last week, the Texans made a signing that I think is worth talking about in Ben Skowronek. And so I want to get your thoughts on this signing. It's an interesting thing, or I guess it's not signing, it's a trade. But trading for Ben Skowronek is one of those things where it was dropped that the Rams were going to release him, and then it came out that the Texans traded for him. What do you think of the compensation, and why do you think the Texans decided to make the move for Ben Skowronek, given where their wide receiver room is right now?
Yeah, so not going to lie, at first when I saw the news, I was kind of caught off guard and surprised, as I'm sure most of us were. But obviously, once it happened, I kind of looked into it a little bit more and did some research and quickly learned that I loved the move. I would assume, obviously, this move was kind of similar to a Mixon deal where the player was going to get cut. So this is another, in my opinion, 100 IQ play by big brain Nick Caserio. Rather than let a guy get cut and hit the open market to free agency, you prevent any bidding, trade for him for basically nothing. I believe the trade was a swap of a 6th and a 7th, which is nothing. They gained a half a round of draft pick, the Rams did. So as far as the trade value, excellent value there. But yeah, so when I, quickly researched him, found out, obviously his numbers aren't, the most appealing numbers there are, but, he wasn't an offense. I would assume the Rams felt like moving on from him, obviously with Cooper Kupp, but I would assume that the advent and emergence of Puka Nacua kind of pushed him out of the fold. They also have Tutu Atwell, who's a solid receiver as well, but he's a bigger body receiver. I believe he's 6'4", 220. And also the thing that I like the most and am intrigued the most about him is his versatility. McVay was having a field day with him in that offense, which, by the way, that offense that McVay runs kind of hails from that same Shanahan tree.
It's the Shanahan tree.
Yeah, so I know him and Kyle were in Washington together when they had all these young coaches become head coaches. But anyway, so if that's the case, it's probably very similar concepts and terminology. And so with the advent of him and his versatility, the thing that was most impressive with me was him lining up in the backfield so he can be used as a fullback. There were times where he would line up at fullback, run through the middle, and then run a deep flag or corner route. So, I mean, that to me is very innovative. And I'm trying not to use all the fodder on it, but the one thing that was really, really cool on it was J.J. Watt getting up and catching a pass. So just watching that stuff, you think, man, this guy is going to be awesome to watch in our offense. So I'm blessing on that, man.
100%. I mean, the versatility is the word. I mean, I feel like you covered it all. I mean, but I'm still going to talk about it because I want to talk about it too. But I think him out of the backfield is going to be huge. So I think that when you frame this as a discussion of if Ben Skoranek can make the team as a wide receiver, then you start to think, well, I don't know, could he be wide receiver 6? And that conversation's no fun. But when you look at Ben Skoranek as the player, the special teams guy, the fullback, and all the versatility that brings to the Texans team, then you start to think to yourself, okay, well, now he can kind of carve out his place in the roster, kind of like Steve Sims at points did last year, where when you just viewed him as a wide receiver, Steven Sims was not a guy that you saw long term on the Texans. But when you watched him as a kick returner, obviously with the only touchdown the Texans scored against the Ravens in the playoffs, hate to remind you all of that, but it was the only one. I mean, that was what gave Steve Sims his value, and I think that Ben Skoranek challenges in that department of versatile guy who maybe will find his place on the roster outside of the wide receiver room. Though his skill set as a wide receiver is incredibly useful in those roles that we could see him in, specifically on plays where McVay would send him out of the backfield. The Texans have done that with Andrew Beck. And so to have a guy who's designated as a wide receiver that you can line up at fullback, expect to make a block, but also expect to be able to get out there and make the play in the passing game, I think it's huge. So yeah, I'm definitely blessed in the signing or the trade. I keep calling it a signing. I get mixed up on that. I think I called the Joe Mixon deal a signing several times after it happened before I finally figured it out. But can we talk nicknames for Ben Skoranek real quick? Did you have any fun with that? I don't know. Biscow.
Hooked on Skoranek's, smoking on Skoranek. I mean, there's a number of them out there. I mean, let's Essence go.
Make the roster first.
Yeah, he better make it.
He better.
Something else I noticed too is the Janke twins out of South Dakota State. If you look at them, they're a similar build type of receiver. I mean, and hopefully one of them or two of them can make the practice squad. But if we do keep a Ben Skoranek, he could be somebody that can groom them to kind of be a future player of his caliber down the road. So, but and you brought it up too. The big thing is in this Shanahan offense, they ask a lot out of wide receivers. They want them blocking in the run game, and he does just that.
No, yeah, 100%. And you kind of there's some people that'll say he fits the bill in a certain other way for Nick Caserio, but I'm not going to go down that path. Oh, oh man, I don't have my phone connected. So I talked last week about adding a bell. Let me see. I can get my phone connected right now, actually. And then we just had a Dolphins fan, comment in the chat, and I like hearing from other teams because it reminds me like we've kind of hinted at throughout this episode, the rest of the NFL is thinking about the Texans. And so it's nice to know that all these people are thinking about us. And so let's see if it comes through. Tell me if you hear it.
Enemy spotted.
Did it come through? I don't know.
That's Counter-Strike?
Yeah, it's an enemy.
Did you play Counter-Strike?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't play. I played Call of Duty. I thought it was from Call of Duty.
That's from Counter-Strike. That's the OG first-person shooter game.
Oh, okay.
The real ones, no, Counter-Strike.
Nice. So that's the new sound effect. Whenever someone from another team comments in the chat, I'm going to drop an enemy spotted.
Enemy spotted.
Got to let them know that we see them. Got eyes on you. But let's get into what we came here for, okay? We came here to talk about the schedule. And the schedule's here. The Texans finally released it. Before we talk about the games, I want to know your thoughts. So I said before the schedule dropped, I said, I need the video to be significantly better than what it was last year. I felt like the whatever they put together last year was something. But I was hopeful that they might find something better to do, and I think it improved. But I do think it was just it's kind of a shell of what other teams are doing. I mean, a lot of like the Chargers are way ahead of the curve when it comes to like how to release a schedule. But what did you think of the ASMR schedule release video?
First I saw it, was like kind of cool, and I was like, you know what, this has kind of been played out. The ASMR, the smashing compression videos, and then a few minutes later, I see the Chiefs one pop up my timeline with the same thing. So I guess, Chiefs are coming off Super Bowl, don't have time to worry about a video. I guess we've been preoccupied with new uniforms and a crazy free agency. Maybe we didn't spend enough time on this. So I was underwhelmed, but then I did go back and look and rewatch it, and I caught the Cowboys portion that I didn't catch the first time, where they put the tag on there saying it's our year. So that to me bumped it back up. Having some fun with that, but underwhelming, but no knocking on the social media team. They've done an outstanding job, and I guess our expectations are kind of high.
No, yeah. And that happened also with the Jaguars and the Commanders. The Jaguars did our scheduled games as vines, and the Commanders did that too, but they released it like an hour later. And so there's just only so many original ideas under the sun that, like what the Texans did last year, no one else was going to copy that. So like I give them credit for that, but it just was like it wasn't impressive. It was just what it was. So, but I don't know. Like you said, they're occupied with other things. There's more important things going on at 6'10" and Kirby, like planning on winning some football games. So let's start. We'll briefly go over the preseason. So the Texans are going to have 4 games in the preseason. We know the Hall of Fame game, that's the Bears. And then you've got the Steelers, Giants, and the Rams, who we talked about, have Sean McVay, similar offensive scheme. What do you think the Texans are going to be looking to get from these games, especially the extra game that's going to be in Canton?
This will be interesting. Last year we had a lot of question marks, a lot of rookies, especially our quarterback. We wanted to see what we had in C.J. Stroud. Last year I was surprised, though. I think they knew before preseason that he was the guy. I feel like he didn't get a lot of reps, and then I wasn't freaking out, but some fans were freaking out in the limited reps we did see against the Patriots. But I would imagine if that was the case last year, when we knew, when it wasn't known to the public that he was for sure the guy week 1, that we won't see a lot of CJ. I guess your typical knocking off rust, and I believe cuts have been delayed the past couple years, so there'll be some guys getting some meaningful snaps all the way until that last game. But so there will be some interesting positions to figure out, wide receiver room particularly. So starters probably not too much, but so a primer.
I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe 3 total drives from the starting lineup throughout the preseason. I mean, especially with the full 90-man roster and having that extra time to analyze who's going where. I mean, I'd say the position I expect to see the least of amongst the starters is like Nico, Tank, and Stephon Diggs are guys that I really almost don't expect. With as many players as are in that wide receiver room, I just don't know how you give them play time during the preseason when you need to analyze the rest of the room to see who fits there. So I don't know. But I think preseason is almost getting to a point. I wouldn't be surprised, based off what Roger Goodell has said, if they cut the preseason down to 1 game here soon in the future, or maybe even 1 or 2 games, just because they might be trying to push the Super Bowl back to President's Day weekend.
Definitely shouldn't be 4 preseason games. That's insane to me.
It's insane that's how many. I wouldn't. There's some people are saying it's interesting to put the Texans in the Hall of Fame game because you almost don't expect CJ to play in that game at all. So
no, not at all.
But
no way.
Enough of the preseason. I think we've given it enough discussion points for now. We're into the beef of it. We're into the real deal. So this to me was almost the most surprising game. We'll start with week 1. The Texans are going to travel to Indianapolis. They ended the regular season in Indianapolis last year. They're going to start it there this year. It's not surprising to see a divisional game early in the schedule, but I think that there's a lot of people that really wanted to see. I don't know, personally, I thought the Bears would have been a good game there, but the Bears are next week, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But what's a game that you thought was going to be there that didn't end up being there? And do you feel better about where it ended up?
As far as like the location of it, the one surprise to me of a game not being primetime was the Green Bay Packers game, Jordan Love or CJ Stroud. But as far as the order, I kind of suspected as some of the leaks came out earlier in the week, or the announcements, I guess, from the primetime channels, that it would be a division rival early on. So wasn't surprised by that. And then the rest of the order, I was fully expecting Cowboys to be on Thanksgiving. So I guess that would be this big surprise. But I'll take the Monday night game instead.
No, yeah, 100%. I thought personally that the Bills would probably, if we were going, so I wanted it to be the Bears. I thought the Bills probably, from the perspective of looking in the AFC, made sense as a matchup for the Texans. But I like Indianapolis week 1. I think the big talking point of this game is going to be, can CJ Stroud beat Anthony Richardson, which is interesting to me considering that Anthony Richardson played like maybe 2 quarters of football in the one time they met. And I mean, he did score 2 touchdowns himself in that time, but yep. I don't know. How do you think it's important to go into Indianapolis and win that first game to set the tone from that perspective, like the CJ Stroud versus Anthony Richardson perspective, or like, what do you think is the most important narrative around this game?
I will say it's weird. Most teams, they get 8 home games and 8 away games, but I'm looking at it now. We have 9 home and 7 away because week 1 we're playing in the Stroud house, the house that CJ Stroud owns, as Pat McAfee has noted. So, but no, but seriously, on this game though, I believe it was is it Zaire Franklin with the podcast? He talked about
Zaire Franklin. Yeah, I need to see CJ again.
Yeah, I mean, he said they're friends, so he was just kind of messing around with him, but he did take the jab that he hasn't beaten Anthony Richardson. So I would think that CJ's, he wants to win every game, but he's got a little extra motivation. But from that perspective, I don't think it's imperatively win for that. Obviously, it's good to get off to a good start. If we did happen to lose, I think the next 5 or 6 games are very winnable. But if we're going to kind of like over analyze this, I think it's nice to get the Colts week 1. Anthony Richardson coming off his injury. I forget exactly what it was, but it was some kind of shoulder injury. I don't know what kind of surgery he had. So maybe he's a little bit rusty coming off week 1. So I think that would give us a slight advantage. I did see it's way too early, but we're a 1.5 point favorite already for this game. So
I'd take that. That's easy money. Not easy money. So I think the Colts are the biggest challenge the Texans have in the division. I don't want to say that you can almost forget about the Jaguars and the Titans. I think the Jaguars just need more from Trevor Lawrence. I think they need him to be what everyone that is on him about who he is. Everyone who likes Trevor Lawrence and thinks he's a top 10 quarterback, that's what they need him to be. They need him to actually be who people think he is. And if he does that, like, I don't care who he has at wide receiver in, Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, he can make that work if he is that guy, but I just don't think he's that guy. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that this game, if the Texans lost, I don't think it would be, I don't think, obviously the first like 3 or 4 games, it's not really the end of the world, but I do think that it sets the tone more than some people might think if the Texans can come away with a win in Indianapolis. But week 2, we have the Bears. Now, the whole narrative around that game in my mind is CJ Stroud versus Caleb Williams. I like that just from the perspective of how many people were like, oh, well, the Texans should just draft Will Anderson Jr. and they should just wait till next year and tank and get Caleb Williams. And so now to see him that early the next season come into NRG and, the Texans open the season, they have new uniforms. It's going to be hype. I imagine NRG is going to be packed. So I like this matchup, and I think I would label this one as a must-win for a lot of reasons. Right, the Bears, I don't think are going to have it put together when this game comes to happen. So I think that while people are hyping up that receiving core, and Caleb Williams, I think that there's going to be reason to believe that they don't necessarily light it on fire in their first 2 or 3 games, and so it's ideal timing to play. Against the Bears is right then. But what do you think of the matchup with the Bears?
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the Caleb Williams thing. That was crazy to me. People wanting us to tank another year to get him. It didn't make sense because, that was just too much of a risk. One, you don't know you're going to get the number one pick. And then two, you look at it now, I mean, his drafts, even though he's number one, but to me, I thought he was the best thing ever. And then after watching him last year, I'm like, I'm not so sold on him just from his play. But, yeah, the timing of it's great. You got a rookie quarterback in his second ever game playing on prime time at NRG, coming off one of the loudest games ever against the playoff game against the Browns. We've had all offseason to fester and get excited. Organizations showing that they're going all in, so fans are very all in. This place is going to be rocking, and it's going to be his second ever game. And to me, the way he plays, he's not much of a pocket passer. I believe his time to throw was one of the longest in the NCAA last year, basically indicating that he constantly scrambles.
He's all about off-platform. That's where he thrives.
Yeah. So, and CJ talked about this too on the BR broadcast, that his advice to quarterbacks was to play within the system and be smart. I think he'll find out pretty quickly in this game that you can't do the things you were doing with your legs in college, especially with the vaunted pass rush that we have now with Anderson and Hunter and Autry and everybody else. So I love the matchup. I think we should win in pretty big fashion.
Yeah, I think if the Texans can, so now that we've had the draft, before the draft, the talk of what the needs for the Texans are revolved around positions. I would say that I've shifted my assessment of what the Texans' weaknesses and needs are to general, more general. Sometimes it could just be a position, but like I'm looking at the offense, for example, I'm like run blocking is going to be the big thing, right? That's going to be what needs to happen, is the offensive line stays healthy and they can run block. Whereas on defense, the big thing is universally throughout all positions is working towards a place where the combination of the pass rush and pass coverage creates a defense that can shut down the passing game. I mean, it's really that simple. Pass defense is what needs to improve, the coverage aspect specifically. And so I think that when we watch, so if that happens, right, we look back at CJ's rookie season and some of the defenses that we were saying were like tough defenses that CJ Stroud faced. You're talking about like the Saints, the Steelers, and I'm not to talk down on those defenses, but like if the Texans put it together in the way that they should, based off the talent they have on this roster, Caleb Williams will face a top defense in the league. Truly, like, It's already a top 10, I believe top 5 run defense. If they get the pass defense up there, Caleb Williams is going to be in hell for 60 minutes, just absolutely hating life. So, I mean, that to me is what truly leads me to believe that the Texans need, like, if they don't win this matchup, I'm likely going to be looking at the pass rush and the pass coverage and going, like we did last year, how did Desmond Ridder put up 300 yards on the Texans defense? How did insert quarterback that has no business throwing for more than 200 yards in an NFL game throw for 300 plus yards on the Texans defense? And so in this game, we're going to find out. I don't want to say it's going to be the first true test. Really, I mean, Anthony Richardson will push the envelope on that because of how diverse he is as a quarterback in terms of run and pass. But I think that Caleb Williams excelling against the Texans early on without the chemistry fully in place would be a bad sign. So I'd like to think the Texans can win this game if all goes as it should. But
yeah, I agree. I will say, yeah, I mean, I am very surprised that this was a primetime game, honestly. I mean, I had like a list of ones that I thought were locks, some maybes, and then Bills. Some like sneak ones. But I mean, there were several other games, Bills, Packers, there's a handful of others that you could have made quote unquote primetime games. But also too, it's the matchup of two of the most touted receiving trios. So we can find out who has the best receiving trio after this game as well.
Yeah. I mean, and that goes back to, I think we had that discussion last week where you have quarterbacks that elevate the talent around them and you have, receivers that elevate the quarterback, right? Or, some variation of that. And so we're going to find out real quick, is that receiving core actually as good as people think it is? Is Caleb Williams actually as good as people think he is? Like, there's going to be a lot put together in that game, whereas we kind of already know what we have in CJ Stroud in terms of how he elevates the talent around him. So I'm not like that we're not going to be looking at that. At least I hope not at this point in the season. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's going to be nice to see. Is Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen and DJ Moore going to be enough to make, a receiver room that Caleb Williams can use in the NFL? But looking at week 3, this is also, so as strong as the Texans' strength of schedule is, they have the 4th toughest schedule based off of last season's records, which, depending on who you talk to, maybe, baloney and might not be a stat worth even looking at. But I mean, I don't know. I think you have to. It's the same way you have to use PFF analytics, right? PFF confirms what's on the film. So if PFF is low and the film is not showing it, then PFF may not be the best metric to use to analyze it. So when I look at the Texans' schedule, not only does the strength of schedule last year look like tough, but I look at the schedule and I see matchups that I know are going to be tough. So to me, the strength of schedule on the Texans' schedule confirms what's already there. So, if you will, we'll see throughout the season if that plays out to be true. One that could flip is later on in the year they play the Dolphins, and I'm not sure if the Dolphins are still going to be as good as they were last year, but I think they can be, so I'm not holding off on that. But as strong as the strength of schedule is, week 3 is a pretty flimsy matchup just based off of J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold being the possibilities we have at quarterback for that matchup. But what do you think of the Texans going into Minnesota?
Yeah, so I actually saw a tweet earlier that, they would expect J.J. McCarthy to start as soon as week 5. So if that's the case, we'll be expecting Sam Darnold, the guy who was seeing ghosts just a couple years ago. So, I think you mentioned the strength of schedule. I think you take that with a grain of salt, like you said, and then you look at all these charts that have been floating around. It's ranking them by winning percentage, and, we're top 5, right, number 4. And you look down 5 or 6 spots, and it's like 10 to 20% points off. So it's really not. It's just like splitting hairs. And then you got to factor into. I mean, things change, injuries happen. So I'm not going to put too much weight into the strength of schedule, but I think this should be another easy game for it. Not easy game, a very winnable game. That would be a devastating loss to lose to a Sam Darnold and/or a JJ McCarthy. I personally am not very high on JJ McCarthy. Even if we do face him, I'm not scared. I guess it'll be a rematch against not a rematch, but re-seeing Jonathan Grenard. This will be the matchup of Grenard and Daniil Hunter. Game, yeah, that's a good point. I think I did a meme on that, the upgrade, or it's like a wife swap. I think we won that swap though.
I think that we won it from certain perspectives. I think that when you look at the youth versus, there's a lot of elements to it, but I think that in the right now, giving up Jonathan Grenard and getting Daniil Hunter is a strong upgrade as it stands. We'll see Absolutely. How long it remains that way with Grenard's injury history, his age versus Daniil's age. So there's a lot to it, but I mean, yeah. So I think that the underrated part of that is Blake Cashman and John Grenard coming back. I agree with you. I'm not super scared of JJ McCarthy. They were showing videos at Falcons camp of Michael Penix hitting people in the hands and them being like, they're so scarred by Desmond Ridder that they don't even know how to catch the ball. But it looked like at Vikings camp, the guys there are so used to the ball being on target from Kirk Cousins that they are just not super happy with what McCarthy's putting out there right now. But I mean, he's a project. He's developmental. I think he can be good at this level. I just don't think he's more of like a sit and wait kind of guy. So hopefully they give him that opportunity. I don't think they have the quarterback in front of him for it to work the way that it usually does with guys like Jordan Love sitting behind Aaron Rodgers behind, basically the Green Bay's whole quarterback equation could be used as a prime example. But overall, yeah, like I said, I'd be frustrated with a loss. Speaking of something that would be frustrating if the Texans lost in week 4, I believe this is the same week they played the Jaguars last year, but they're going to play them at home in week 4 this year instead of away. I'll just go right into it. What are your thoughts on this matchup, the new look Jaguars receiving core and all that?
I mean, I'm on the same page with you. You alluded to it earlier about Trevor Lawrence. I think he's overrated. I don't think he's. I mean, to me, he's still questionable about whether he is the guy or the franchise quarterback or not. You know, I made a low light video of him the other day, and it was like 2.5 minutes long, and it was only a fraction of his low lights. And you can make one honestly of him entirely against the Texans. And I know people say, "Oh, that's just cherry picking," but I mean, his low lights are low lights. I mean, they're just wild overthrows, like just out of nowhere. He makes a lot of bad decisions, which at quarterback, I think is the most underrated part of the position, is being smart. That's one of the things that makes CJ Stroud so good, in my opinion, is his ability and understanding at such a young age to realize that you don't always have to make the home run play to throw the ball away. And that's not even getting into everything pre-snap, reading a defense, checking, audibling. So I think he's overrated. You can tell, too, when he plays, a lot of the plays, too, he has like these crazy fumbles. Like he's trying to be a Superman and extend the play, and then just the ball will just slip out of his hands. Or, but he has shown where he can get on a hot streak and he looks like all world, but he's just too inconsistent up and down. So I'm not scared of him personally. He could be on his A game. He did have a good game against us last year, but as far as their new receiving core, I'm not scared of that. I mean, I like Brian Thomas Jr., but I feel like he's kind of like a tweener receiver. He's got that bigger body, X-type body height-wise, but frame, he's kind of smaller. So, hopefully, I believe we do a lot of press coverage. And from what D'Amico did this offseason, it alludes to them wanting to run more man coverage. If that's the case, I say you get right up in his grill and not let him get off the line of scrimmage. So with them, the one person I'm scared of is Etienne Jr. I mean, he's dynamic, but aside from that, I'm confident in it. Like this beginning to the schedule again. I'm so far through. I think we could be 4-0.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you, and I mean, I'd like to say, but when the discussion was being had around if the Texans took a wide receiver early, Brian Thomas Jr. and Keon Coleman were the guys that were up there for me, and the Texans will face them in back-to-back, matchups. But as far as the Jaguars go, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, especially with the Trevor Lawrence point. I think that every once in a while I have to look at his stats to remind me he has put up stats in the league. Like, if you look at his stats, you're like, oh, on paper, this is an impressive quarterback. But when you just watch where he folds, how he folds, and it's really more or less relative to the expectations that were set on him by his draft position. When we look at the other number one overall picks you've got around this time, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow. I mean, we're looking at guys that you could go back as far as Jared Goff, and you could see that all the guys I named, I think it's more of a discussion between Trevor Lawrence and Kyler Murray, but because Kyler Murray's had a rough go of it, but like I think that's more the category he's in, is we're comparing him in that way. We're not talking about him relative. We're talking about CJ Stroud relative to Joe Burrow, because CJ Stroud has shown to be at that level in every facet of the game. So I think that at home, I mean, it's a divisional game, and I'll always say this, and I feel like I should clarify this. I should have clarified this at the beginning when we talked about the Colts, but I think that any divisional game can go any way. I think that the Titans are total trash, and they could come into NRG and just be on it because it's a divisional game, and that's just any given Sunday is amplified in the division. Like any given Sunday,
like Bet can return a kick for a touchdown or something,
Yeah, like if you look at that game the Texans played early in the season in Jacksonville, and you look at a lot of the things that went the Texans' way, I think the Texans got up to the level that we believed they were at that point, but I think they got a lot of help from the circumstances surrounding that game to get that win. Like, Andrew Beck literally recovering his own fumble and taking it, all the way to the end zone for a touchdown on that kick return. So as much as I'd like to think the Texans just outright dominated, there was just some things the Jaguars failed at, and they, gave the Texans the opportunity, and the Texans took it. And like I said, I think it was really the Steelers game, and maybe you could say it was as late as the Bucs game that the Texans really stretched out and reached that full potential of theirs last season. But I think that early on there was some things that went their way, so I'm not gonna act like that can't go one way or another because this is a division matchup. But like you said, I mean, we've not talked about a matchup yet where I feel like the Texans can't win it. So
agreed.
You have anything else to say about that before you move to the next one?
Nope.
All right, let's talk about the Bills. I mentioned Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman is, if he's good, man, I'm going to be so frustrated that the Texans didn't get him. Because, man, he is just the funniest person I've ever... He's a walking meme. Like, the Bills are the perfect social media team for him just because of the way he comes across as a person. So, like, I'm excited to see that play out just off the field. But I think that Josh Allen's really going to have to prove, was it Stephon Diggs that made Josh Allen, or is Josh Allen a good quarterback? And I think we'll know pretty quickly, unless Keon Coleman is just that guy, then we'll probably never know. But I think that if you look at the way Josh Allen has played throughout his career, you can either say, wow, he's really good, but he's got a turnover problem, or you can say, wow, his receivers are really good and he has a really powerful arm. Like, I think that there's scenarios where Will Levis progresses to be what Josh Allen is, and people go, oh my gosh, how did we not see this coming? And it's like, well, Will Levis is literally just a guy who can throw the ball really hard. And so if they put a good enough receiver out there, yeah, sure, he could be good. But it could legitimately be that Josh Allen's just a great quarterback. And that's where I lean. I lean towards Josh Allen just being good. But we're going to find out. And I think that's going to be an important factor in deciding how this game goes. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, first off, Keon Coleman, I've been saying it. He's a top 5 personality in the NFL already. That dude is hilarious. I love him, dude. He's genuinely just funny. He's just being himself. I think today there was the clip of him on the podcast with Adam Schefter, and he asked him about his top 3 favorite candies, and he just kept going on. He's like, well, I'm gonna give you 6, just he's a funny guy, but I may not be as high on him as you as a talent. I think he was a great fit for them. I think that they needed to replace obviously Diggs, but they replaced Diggs, in my opinion, with Curtis Samuel for that position type, the Z receiver / slot receiver, faster, quicker guy. But they needed that bigger guy to stretch the field, and that is Keon Coleman. But for me, he's a big receiver. I think he'll be more of a possession receiver, which I think Josh Allen can exploit and take advantage of, back shoulder fades, jump balls. But his speed for me is an issue, and I'm not quite set on his route running. I think they'll maximize his talents, but I don't think he's going to be this big superstar receiver that some of us think, like an A.J. Brown type for that position. And then the Bills as a whole, man, I mean, what a crazy offseason they had. I mean, they were in salary cap hell, and general manager Brandon Beane made a lot of cuts. He had to. The defense they had last year, their success last year, a lot of it was due to their defense. They had a damn good defense. And I think they faltered in the playoffs because they got hit with the injury bug pretty damn bad. They lost a lot of defensive players. I think I forget the names, but a couple linebackers, guys in the secondary. And then now most of those guys are cut. So, I mean, not only did you lose Diggs, Josh Allen's number 1 guy who's been his security blanket for X amount of years, but you lost a lot of important players on defense. So I think they have a lot of questions, and I think they're in for a tough year. I think they're fighting to be above 500, to be honest. And Josh Allen too. He's always
like last year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but now it's like even more so. And then Josh Allen to me has always kind of been that guy. Like I feel like they want to put him in this elite top 3. I don't think he's quite there. I feel like his highlight plays, like his wild plays, just really stick in your mind. But if you look at the overall play, like we talked about earlier, the cerebral part of it, reading a defense decision making. Last year, he made so many boneheaded plays, but it's kind of a double-edged sword because some of those crazy risky plays, when they do work, it ends up being a touchdown, but it could be a pick 6 at the same time. I feel like he's just, one of those guys that's trying to do too much, and that's just the way they play. I think they embraced it. I do like Brady as the OC. I think he realized that they needed to be more conservative and run the ball, which is kind of why Diggs got out of there. But yeah, I think it's another winnable game. Like, I hate to be a homer. I'm always a usually optimistic guy, but I think in this instance it warrants it. I mean, yet again, another winnable game. I'm excited, and it's at home, so we're good. Oh, I think we should note too the jersey. Is this the H-Town jerseys? I believe.
believe they're doing it with Buffalo. So it'll be week 5 against Buffalo because week 6 is New England. I had it in my head. So it's important to note there we got a lot of people in the chat asking what our record predictions are, and so you'll see we're kind of talking about how winnable we think each game is. I think we'll get a better feel and we'll be able to give a strong last week we gave a record prediction just off the top of our heads, but I think looking at this now and having more of the factors around it, we might be able to give you a more accurate feel for how we feel. Maybe mine will go up. I've been pretty, I think relative to most Texans fans, I've been pretty low.
Do you want to do it at the end and just after we go through and then maybe just go through win, loss, and see what it is?
Yeah, we'll take turns going through just win, loss, and just calling it. But
okay.
to give one final comment on the Bills game, I do agree with you that Josh Allen's the ultimate boom or bust. He's had a lot of boom in his career, and I think that all it will take is for the bust to take over, and we might see the whole Buffalo fandom turn on him. I don't wish that on him. I think once again I'm not on the Josh Allen's not a good quarterback train. I think he's definitely better than Trevor Lawrence.
He's just not top 3 like they've been saying for a couple years, in my opinion.
I do agree. I think that top 3 is a bit high. Week 6, the Texans play New England. I don't really have a lot to say about it. My brother-in-law's a Patriots fan. Shout out to George. Hey, what's up? I mean, I go into Foxborough. I've been to a few games at Foxborough back when Brady was playing. The Texans, the Brock Osweiler years for the Texans in Foxborough. Not the most fun from that perspective, but it's an environment that when it's at its best is tough to play in. I'm glad this game's earlier in the season because the Texans, I think, I need to look up the stats on it, right? I hadn't fully verified it, but I just have this feeling that I need to vet with information that the Texans are just not a cold weather team, which is unfortunate considering that you have to play in the winter. Typically, the Texans would probably need to be a 1 seed and have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, I think, to make the Super Bowl. That's just my hypothesis right now. I'll get back to y'all once I've vetted that information. But yeah, so that would have been my biggest concern with the Patriots. I don't think Drake May, I don't even know if he's going to be starting at that point, let alone whether or not he'll be a concern for the Texans. That defense is still has a lot of the pieces that made it good. It's still a good defense, but we encountered that late last season with the Jets, and with the Jets game last year is basically what I'd be concerned about in Foxborough if the game was later in the year. But since the game is not, I don't have those concerns. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, yet again, another very winnable game. If Drake May starts this game, that's potentially 3 rookie quarterbacks in our first 6 games. Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, Drake May. I mean, can you ask for an easier start to the season? It will be interesting with Gerard Mayo. I mean, Belichick's been there for 20-plus years or however long it's been. It's definitely interesting for them. I don't see the Patriots having a good season. I don't see it being I think a lot of these games too, like teams like this, it's kind of the approach we took last year. I don't think we're going to go into these games looking to blow them out. We're just going to look to go in there and get a win, get out to an early couple score lead, and just kill the clock, run the ball. I suspect that's how it is. So, I mean,
hopefully
some of these games may not.
Joe Mixon in the backfield, run
exactly.
the ball better.
Because, I mean, D'Amico has shown that's his philosophy. He's a defensive-minded head coach. You can tell that's what he wants to do. Ball control, field position, kill the clock, rely on the defense. So games like this, I think people might be wanting us to win 42-10. It might be like a 24-3 or 10 type game. But, yeah, I mean, a very winnable game. Should take care of business. Get revenge for that Letterman jacket game. I went to that game whenever it was, and I got MF'd I wore a red J.J. Watt jersey, and every single person there, whether it was a 6-year-old kid or an 88-year-old grandmother, made sure to cuss me out for wearing a jersey. So
I'll tell you, when I went, it was a lot nicer. I didn't get a lot of that, but I think that's because the Texans were at a point where I don't think anyone expected them to have a chance to win. The worst environment I've ever been in was I went to a Texans Saints game. I want to say it was 2011, preseason and regular season. And I got I was wearing a battle red Andre Johnson jersey, and I was literally 17. Like I was relatively young, right? And I got like a beer thrown at me by one of the Saints fans, and I was like, "Why are you throwing a beer at a 17-year-old? It's not that serious." The Texans were crushing them at that point, but they lost, I believe, both of those games, which was unfortunate. But that's why
mystery box, I guess.
I'm not a good luck charm for the Texans on the road. I think they did beat the Chargers out in LA that first year when I went to see, and I got to play catch with JJ Watt, so that was pretty cool. And by catch, I mean he threw it to me one time and I threw it back. So pretty big moment. Not gonna lie. But with that, we'll move into the next matchup. Now, this is one that I definitely felt like a lot of people thought was going to be prime time. Stroud versus Love. It's also one where weather was a factor for me with Lambeau. But since it's so early in the season, it could still. I mean, it's late enough that it could be an issue, depending on how that Wisconsin winter hits. But I'm not super concerned from that perspective. But I do think so. Moving forward, all the rest of these matchups I feel like are up in the air. There's obviously still 4 more divisional games, but I'd say the Titans games are the only 2 left that I'm like 100% like the Texans should win that without factoring in the divisional thing. But how do you feel about the Packers game out in Lambeau?
I hate that I agree with you on everything. It doesn't make for good, listening for the viewers. But yeah, I mean, these first 6 games all very winnable, and then now we get into this later half of the schedule. These are the games where they could go either way. But yeah, I personally, as a fan of just football, am very excited about this game. I really like the Green Bay Packers and what they do and what they did. Jordan Love, I was high on him. I thought he was going to have a breakout year last year after seeing him come in for Rodgers when he got hurt last year or the year before. And he just has the arm talent. You can tell him sitting out and learning really helped him as far as the mental side of the game goes. He gets it. He goes through the reads. He's on the same page with LaFleur. He's a great play caller who just absolutely outcoached the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy in that playoff game. And I love their young receiving core. I mean, they drafted 2 or 3 guys last year in the mid to late rounds, and all of them are ballers, and tight ends. They drafted 2 tight ends, and they're both studs. I guess we may have the leg up on the defense
in Dynasty in the rookie draft, so I'm pretty
receivers
stoked about that. One of their well, I do have one of their receivers, but I'm just talking about the tight ends.
Tight ends, yeah, Musgrave and other one's fleeting my mind right now, but
Musgrave's the one I picked up, and then
okay.
I can't remember.
He got hurt, and then the other guy came in, and he just was even better. But anyhow, they're loaded with talent on offense, and obviously they moved on at running back and got a new acquisition there. I think that's a great game. Me as a fan personally like to go to an away game. I try to go to one each year. This would be a great game to go to. Go to historic Lambeau Field.
Oh yeah,
watch
Lambeau's
2 great
on
quarterbacks.
The bucket list for me.
Well, maybe we'll have to make it happen, bro. But
for sure.
Yeah, so I think this is a game that's going to be very close. Flip a coin, and it'll be fun to watch.
100%. Before we move to the next game, Mr. Williams says sleeping J.C. Latham and their O-line is crazy. It's funny that you say it that way because the only player on their O-line that's worth noting in terms of general fear outside of J.C. Latham is the guy they drafted who is a tackle who now plays left guard for the team. Funny how the Texans and Titans have so many mirrored similarities. Hopefully that one does not remain a similarity, but I can't even remember his name. Skowronek? Not Skowronek, that's Ben Skowronek. Skowronski? Who plays left guard?
Peter Skowronski from Northwestern?
Yeah.
Northwestern. That guy's. Well, I thought he was on the. You talking about the Saints? I thought the Saints got.
No,
I'm thinking of somebody. I'm thinking of the other guy. I'm sorry.
No, he's
Skowronski. Yes.
But all that being said, let's just assume the O-line is as good as your comment implies it is. The thing I'm sleeping on with the Titans, and I've said this before, I'll just briefly say it before we get into the next matchup. I'm sleeping on Will Levis, and until he plays past the potential I see, or up to the potential that I see in him, and plays better than, plays to the 4 touchdowns in one game debut consistently, I will remain asleep. So wake me up when Will Levis can play ball the way that you seem to believe he can, because that is what's making me sleep on the Titans. But anyway, we'll talk more about the Titans later. we already talked about the Colts. We'll have them at home week 8. It's the AJ Hall of Fame game is what they're calling it. That's the theme. Really only thing worth
Automatic
talking about
win.
with that I will say we might not even see Anthony Richardson in that matchup. That's just me. Just history tends to repeat itself. The way Anthony Richardson plays the game, I mean, it could very well be that he might not make it through the first game of the season with the way that defense is going to play. But I mean,
we agree on everything.
8,
I think the exact same thing. I mean, his play style, and it's their offense too. It's the double-edged sword with the athletic quarterback. You know, as an OC, you want to maximize that ability of a rushing quarterback, but you don't want to do it too much where they get hurt, which is what happened last year. You know, and it goes back to the being smart, like CJ said several times, and on that VR stream on the draft, you got to know when to get rid of the ball, know when to, you know, how to flush the pocket and when to slide. So I think he may be injured. I hate to say it, I hope not, but hopefully they find a way to keep him healthy.
100%, because I think that this whole CJ Stroud can't beat Anthony Richardson narrative is. I made a whole video on Instagram about how I don't think that Anthony Richardson being healthy the whole season significantly impacts the Colts record the last year. I don't think that it makes a difference in the way that people think it does. But I think Gardner Minshew's steadiness as a veteran versus, you know, the boom or bust production of Anthony Richardson doesn't present a significant difference. But anyways, that's a topic for another day. We'll get into this now. This next matchup, week 9, I think should be a federal crime, and I think that whoever scheduled this game should serve time. And once again, I'd be 100% more okay with it if it switched with the Patriots game. I'd rather go to Foxborough at that point in the season than New York. But anyway,
James, you got the internal temp high. Allow it to cool going on again.
Switch to my FaceTime camera. Sorry.
He's cooking too much again, guys.
Cooking too hard. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay, just got to start it up. Why is it still on that one? All right, there we go. I'm back. I think Jacob Ayers actually made that same comment last week when my camera did the same thing. And now I know how long my camera can go before it fails. So thanks for that. I'm glad that we've got some consistency in here. But yeah, I think it should be a federal crime the way they scheduled that. And the fact that they can schedule the Texans to go to MetLife twice in a 2-year span should be illegal. But that's my biggest point on it. I mean, we could talk about Aaron Rodgers and him. That's another thing, right? Is Aaron Rodgers going to be healthy behind the O-line that the Jets have built long enough to see this game? Who knows? But if he does, then yeah, this is an interesting matchup. I do think it's very, I don't know. Like, this is the first one where I kind of go, I look at the Jets defense, I look at the conditions, and depending on the weather that day is what I need to know to decide if the Texans can win this game.
Cold and rainy.
This
game. Yeah, this game's got me stressing. Like you mentioned,
to the max.
MetLife, but not only MetLife on Halloween nonetheless. So I'm definitely stressing about that. Yeah, we know. I mean, we all know how bad MetLife is, and that turf. It's like freaking concrete, you know. Obviously, last year CJ got hurt. I think Nico got hurt that game. I think that's where maybe Will Anderson or Grenard also got hurt. I mean, we had 3 or 4 guys go down with various injuries. So
it was our very own body bag game, you know.
Yeah, but I personally think people are sleeping on the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. Like, we never even got to see him. He had a freak Achilles injury, and like they forget who Aaron Rodgers is. Like, do y'all not remember what he's done in this league and how recently he's done it? And even then, I mean, let's just say he's 60-70% of what he was 2 years ago. That's all they need in this offense. I mean, they have an elite defense. And actually, I keep bringing this up with the BR draft stream. Stroud mentioned this too. He's like, yes, like he said, as long as they get anything on offense, they're good. He talked about how good their defense is. But that'll be fun to note for him too. I'm sure this will be a good test for us to see how much we've grown as a team to play a tough physical defense, because they basically just line up and hit you in the mouth. They play man-to-man defense, physical, so that'll be a good test. This is a tough game, close to 50-50, but I think this will be a hard one for us to win, just given it being on the road. Again, like you said, weather could be a factor, so, and it's Halloween.
100%. I think you hit the nail on the head. And like, especially the Aaron Rodgers part, like I think a lot of people, that's why I mentioned, like, if he's healthy and he makes it to that point, like that, and it was already tough with that defense, with the conditions on the field that the defense the Jets have, and the conditions on that field and then Zach Wilson apparently suddenly became like an excellent quarterback. Or maybe our defense has made him look like it. Now he's not even on the team, but
I still can't believe that.
Still can't believe that right up there with the Desmond Ridder 300-yard game. But up next in Week 10 is the Lions game, and this is the one that I've been looking forward to. It's the second consecutive primetime game, Sunday Night Football. I think it's a Super Bowl preview. I mean, if I'm dropping a very early Super Bowl prediction, this is very realistic in that realm. I think that both new uniforms, it's going to be a good look on the field. And overall, yeah, just super excited for that matchup. I don't really have anything too particular to. These are two teams that just don't play a lot, and so it'd be hard to like say a lot about what's going to go on in that matchup. But what are your thoughts on it?
This is an awesome game. This is the two darlings of the NFL. I mean, everyone loves the Lions. The city of Detroit has been through hell and back as a fan base. I root for them. They're a fun team to watch. My brother-in-law is a diehard Lions fan, so this will be a fun game for us to watch. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is you said they don't play too often. I always think about that Thanksgiving game where I forget the exact details of that penalty, but we basically stole the game from them.
Justin Forsett was down, and what's his face? Who's the coach?
Oh,
at the time?
He didn't challenge it.
I can't.
Jim Bob Fisher, Jim Bob Cooter.
No, what's his name? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. Golly. I know you're talking about,
It wasn't
too.
Jim Caldwell.
Yeah, he's the guy at the sidelines that was trying to fight the other coach, too. Someone in the chat help us out.
Yeah, he threw a challenge flag, and the way that the rule was written at the time, the Lions couldn't have the play reviewed because they challenged it. That was like the new rule was they automatically reviewed scoring plays. And so, yeah, just incredibly frustrating for them. But I mean, it
Jim
was literally
Schwartz.
the difference in that game.
Was it Jim Schwartz?
Jim Schwartz. There it is.
I had to look that one up. That was going to bug me. But yeah, I mean, this is another game this is going to be a tough one. One of the tougher ones. Lions are. Their offensive coordinator is one of the best. Ben Johnson, super creative, so that'll be a good matchup for D'Amico. A lot of firepower. Jared Goff, underrated quarterback, great defense. And I believe this is the game we're wearing our Battle Red, which is not the official name, but our red uniforms. That's the first game we're wearing them, or the one official game. So NRG will be rocking.
Red. The color is still Battle Red.
Gotcha. I just forget. I don't know like the exact term they call it, but yeah, I mean that place is gonna be rocking. I'll probably be there, so it'll be a good game, and I'm sure a lot of America is gonna want to watch it too. So it'll be a fun one to watch. Again, it's like the Jets game to me. You know, probably give the Lions a slight edge, be a good test for us to see where we're at. So it's kind of up in the air for me on that one.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one of the matchups that's going to be tough. The next week, now this was one that I thought the Texans were going to get scheduled to play on Thanksgiving. Foolish of me to think that since they really like putting the Cowboys, division rivals on Thanksgiving. But the Texans will be playing the Cowboys. If I understand scheduling correctly, the Texans play the Cowboys like twice every 8 years or something like that, which is one of the reasons the rivalry is probably not as strong on both ends as it should be. But I mean, nonetheless, I'm excited to see this matchup. I know there would be a lot of Texans fans making what is the shortest drive they can possibly make to get there. And so, I mean, I'm excited to see it, especially with all these Titans fans comparing C.J. Stroud to Dak Prescott. We get our most direct comparison there in AT&T Stadium. As you may or may not have guessed, I'm not a huge fan of that comparison. But what are your thoughts on the matchup?
I love it. I got a lot of friends that are from Dallas. Actually, my wife is a Dallas Cowboys fan, so it'll be a house divided. We actually plan on going to the game with some friends there, so I'm very excited about it. My take on the Cowboys is, they're the same team that is better than above average, but they're, maybe that wild card division 1-win playoff team. Dak Prescott's the one holding them back when it comes down to it, and Mike McCarthy, the coaching. But, I mean, they're a talented roster. And then you got the Micah Parsons, CJ Stroud element to this, the two besties going at it. So that'll be fun to watch. I know CJ was kind of giving him grief about it, saying that he's got to see Laramie. So hopefully Laramie can shut him down like Myles Garrett. But a lot of star power. This is, again, back-to-back weeks where we're on prime time. Actually, this will be the third game in a row. We had the Jets, Lions, and then now the Cowboys. But I'm sure this one, a lot of people will be interested in watching. And I hope we win. I mean, so like you said, we play once every 4 years. I was at the last one in Dallas, the one where that clip was going around recently where Romo spun out of that J.J. Watt sack and threw a touchdown, I believe, to go ahead. And I was in that end zone and had, unfortunately, a great view of that. So hopefully we can erase that from our memory and create a good new one. But I think this is, like the other ones, a tough game, but I would say that we have a slight edge, and I think we can win this and hope we do.
I hope so, too. I hope so. I mean, I think this is one where I could say that I think that, especially after they did with Davis Mills against the Cowboys a couple of years ago, I think that this is definitely a winnable game. Yeah. So this next matchup, we already kind of talked about it. Everyone who's been on this for any amount of time already knows how I feel about the Titans. So I'm going to let you talk about the Titans coming to Houston in Week 12.
Yeah, I said it last time I was on the show. Funniest hashtag in the league. Unironically, tighten up. Like, I couldn't imagine just saying that all the time and like thinking it's cool. Anyways, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the quarterback situation. Levis, I said it last week with you guys. Everyone tends to remember just his first start where he went off for 4 touchdowns and was throwing bombs, 40-yard, 60-yard bombs left and right to D-Hop. But I think he's not a great pocket passer. I guess he could prove me wrong. I think he relies on his feet too much. He likes to run, which last year that killed us. I hope that we improve in guarding defending running quarterbacks, but we should be able to take care of business in both of our matchups with them. So hopefully Hannah sneaks in the H-Town Blues for these since it's at home.
That's the biggest thing that I didn't talk about this to bring up is with H-Town Blue debuting against the Bills, which has its significance in and of itself that we didn't talk about with the Bills Oilers, whole thing back with the big old
playoff letdown, the one that Warren Moon blew.
100%.
After he slided us on our uniforms.
Yeah. But looking at it, the not wearing H-Town Blue against the Titans would be an interesting decision given how they've been about it. But I mean, it's up to the Texans. I don't know who gives input into that decision. I think maybe they're like trying to take the high road on that, but we'll see. We'll find out what the uniform combos are soon enough.
I wouldn't put it past Hannah, man. She's pretty feisty.
I agree. Even if they snuck it in as like the H-Town jersey, but with like maybe a different, other pieces instead of just the whole jersey or the whole outfit. But yeah, the next matchup is the Jaguars. We already talked about the Jaguars. Not much to say there. We're just going to be traveling to Jacksonville late in the season, which is lovely considering how weather works. And then there's the bye in Week 14. And then this is the gauntlet. The roughest stretch of the Texans season, I would say, happens here between Week 15 and 17. So the Dolphins matchup is the one that could possibly not be a part of that, depending on how the Dolphins are. And we'll know pretty well what the Dolphins bring to the table when they get to this point in the season. I don't think there's a fall off in store. I think that they have enough. They've had to make some moves to free up cap space, but I think that they're in a good spot. What do you think about the Dolphins matchup?
It'll be a tough one. I mean, the speed they have on offense is absolutely insane, and they just keep adding running backs. I believe they got Jalen Wright. Is that correct? Another
I want to say
fast
the
running
two they
back.
picked up, yeah.
And it's like, why did you do that? You didn't even need him. You already have A-Chan, or however you say his name, Devon A-Chan, I believe, and you already have Mostert. They got obviously Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. They signed Odell Beckham too, correct? So
Yeah.
they got firepower on offense. Tua, I think he's like that tier 2, 3, like that bottom of the tier 2. He's another guy who can look great at times, and then other times not so much. I think part of the reason why he looked so good for most of the year last year was because of Mike McDaniel and how he was able to simplify things for him. It looked like he had a lot of quick 1-2 reads, but I feel like he's a quarterback. If he has to really get into a true progression, he can get into some trouble. So that would be done by putting pressure on him or getting some sticky coverage. But I think the Dolphins are going to run away at the AFC East. I think they don't really have much competition this year. But the Bills kind of fallen back. Last year, I thought they were good. They were kind of like the Bills, too. I mean, they had a lot of injuries. I felt terrible for them. They were a good team to watch, a fun team to watch. I enjoyed watching them on the in-season Hard Knocks. But, I mean, their showing in the playoffs was not fair to me. I mean, they had lost more than half their defense, and I'm talking like superstar players. And then on top of that, and I believe they had some on offense too, they had to go into Kansas City in, 0-degree weather or something. And of course, it's the takeaway is, they can't play in the cold, which I think it does affect their offense, but I think it was more so injury. So that game, the over-under in that game could be 60 plus. But I would put this in the same basket as Lions or Jets or Packers as a tough game, probably a 50-50 game. But, I just flip a coin on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll know more about it later in the season. We got a couple questions in the chat. Do you think we sign Justin Simmons? I don't think so. And then, how do you feel about no Thanksgiving game? I kind of said it. I mean, it would have been nice. I think it would have been a good game, but I'm not too hurt. It's like D'Amico said, I don't care where we're playing as long as we go out there, go and get the win. But these last two matchups, we've got the Chiefs and the Ravens. There's obviously the Titans game to end the season, but we already talked about the Titans a whole bunch. But what do you think about the Texans traveling to Arrowhead, the Pat Mahomes versus CJ Stroud game?
Yeah, the first one. So, I mean, like you said, and I've been calling this too, this is the gauntlet. Luckily we have a bye before, but the rest on these is concerning. You go from playing Dolphins on a Sunday, short rest, Saturday against the Chiefs. This will be on NBC, so it's not considered a primetime game, but it's a nationally televised game. Mahomes versus Stroud. I would imagine the Chiefs would be in position to where they're close to wrapping up their division. So this could be for them to clinch their division and or some kind of home field advantage. So this could be a very competitive game. I mean, we could be in the same position. This game could be, I'm just realizing this right now, this game could be for AFC home field event for the number 1 seed. That's very exciting. So both teams hopefully are healthy and will be at their best. Again, another great test to see where we're at. I think we can hang with them. Chiefs, obviously, returning Super Bowl champions. Flip a coin, obviously give them the edge, but I think we can win it. So I'm excited.
100%. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, and it's tough to say this about a team that's won the last 2 Super Bowls, right? But obviously the offense kind of fell off a little bit last season. And the defense had to pull a lot more weight to get the Chiefs to where they went. And so the big question mark to me with the Chiefs is whether or not Xavier Worthy is the piece they need to get that offense back on track. And if he's not, will they be able to grind out another season of the defense, kind of pulling more weight than they have in the past, with the offense maybe still struggling a little bit, right? It's still the Chiefs. They still produce, but they weren't at the offense wasn't at the same level last year as it has been throughout this dynasty that they've been working on. All right. But with that, there's the one more matchup to talk about, which is the Ravens. And the chat's asking about it too. A rematch of the divisional round. CJ Stroud versus Lamar Jackson. It's going to be at home, thank God, late in the season. and once again, another game that could really realistically be for the fate of the AFC. What are you thinking about it?
Yeah, so again, this little gauntlet stretch, this is another short rest. Obviously, the Ravens are on the same schedule. They play that Saturday as well to make it fair, but I think they played the Steelers. So, we both play tough opponents, but us playing the Chiefs is tough. But I guess thinking now, though, I think there was something about, was it the Steelers to where, like, every team, their record of playing games after the Steelers was, like, terrible because the Steelers play so physical. So I'm guessing that's a silver lining for us. Hopefully the Steelers division rival game week before bang up the Ravens and, maybe they're lessened a little bit for us. And, but,
what would an
yeah,
episode
anyhow,
podcast be without a no Diddy?
Yeah, you got to do it. I mean, you never know these days. I mean, I get checked on it all the time. It better be safe than sorry,
Better be safe than sorry. The podcast
name real quick
is
too.
The Bullpen. I got someone in the chat asking, but
yeah, you're good. Yeah, so a good point though. You mentioned the cold weather. That Chiefs game, potentially cold weather, so that'll be tough. But it's also good to prepare us for the playoffs too. So, but yeah, this Ravens game, obviously, it's a rematch of the divisional round. I was at that game. You mentioned the Steven Sims punt return earlier. After he ran that back, I thought for sure we were going to win. I actually tweeted at halftime that Lamar Jackson was shook. Let's go win this thing. And then I tweeted an update saying, update, he was not shook. We got our butts kicked, and it went viral. The Ravens fans are really cool about it. But, yeah, I mean, Christmas Day, too. It's on Netflix. Lamar versus CJ, two young quarterbacks that are outstanding human beings. It should be fireworks, two great defenses. This will be a real test, and like you mentioned, potentially some severe playoff implications, hopefully for the number 1 seed. So I would put it in the same bucket as the Chiefs game, probably give the Ravens a slight edge, but I think we can still win.
100%. With that, so obviously there's the Titans game, but we already talked about the Titans. I kind of have to hop off, so I'm going to bring this in. I know we said we were going to give our record predictions. Maybe we can do that later in the offseason, which makes more sense when you think about it. But thanks for tuning into the Bullpen. Thank you, Garrett, for popping on and filling in for Tom. We're blessing that for sure. And we're blessing this Texans season. Excited to see them work through the offseason, see what the final product looks like through the offseason before they go out and start their quest for the first time in a long time, a legitimate quest for a Super Bowl. So we're hyped to see it. This has been the Bullpen. I have been James Roy. You can find me on social media at M1 Texans fan or James Roy NFL. It really just depends on the platform. Still working through that right now. And then this has been Garrett, aka at Texans commenter, aka Houston Stressins. And so if
we
you're
ain't stressing no more.
If you ain't stressing, you ain't trying. I mean, sorry if you ain't. Yeah.
Got you hung up there. Sorry.
we got to get your Instagram following up. I believe your Instagram is actually at Houston Stressins, right?
Yes.
And so if you don't follow him on Instagram, head over and do that. But one of the up and coming accounts on Twitter, really up and already way up there accounts on Texans Twitter. And if you're not following him wherever you get your Texans news, you're probably not getting as much Texans news as you should be getting. So make sure you give him a follow. Quick plug before we really bring it to an end. As I announced recently, I'm a Fanatics affiliate. If you're thinking about buying anything from a website, Fanatics or NFL Shop, I've got links in my bio on all socials where you can click in. And if you buy anything after clicking one of those links, it helps me out. And the best part is that you don't have to pay more money to do that. It's just you telling Fanatics to give me part of the money that you paid to Fanatics. And I'm telling you right now, I'm putting it out right now. When that total in that account, which is already kind of showing a little progress, once it reaches the price of 2 jerseys, I will be doing 2 separate giveaways, an Instagram and Twitter giveaway where I will give away one of the new Texans jerseys of your choosing. So make sure you're smashing that link in my bio and buying stuff, because the quicker that gets up there, the quicker I can do that. That'll be the funds for that. So once again, this has been the bullpen. Someone in the chat asked, and I guess there's nothing on here that shows that this is the bullpen. And one more time, thank you to Garrett for being on. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans.